Welcome to Finding Solutions. I'm Dan Albus, Member of Parliament for Okanagan Lake West, South Kelowna. In this segment, Okanagan Stories and Solutions, we speak with individuals whose work is helping to shape our region, people who bring experience, leadership, and a commitment to building stronger communities. My guest today is someone who's done exactly that across business, public life, and community leadership. Renee Merrifield is the founder and CEO of Troika Group, a former member of the Legislative Assembly of British Columbia, a long-standing contributor to the social and economic fabric of the Okanagan Valley. Renee, thanks so much for being here.
Thank you, Dan, for having me.
Well, let's start with you. First of all, what has you excited?
What has me excited? Well, I would say that with any sort of economic tumult, there is opportunity. And what I really feel in my last conversations is that there's a lot more communication around what's possible than, kind of the doom and gloom of where we're at today.
And for yourself personally, what gets you out of bed every morning? What keeps you motivated to do all the great things you do?
Oh, I get out of bed every single morning and I am super excited about the people I get to see. I am a consummate extrovert. I love people. I can't get enough. But from the people that I get to work alongside every single day, to the people that I get to impact positively, to the people that I get to see on the street, I am elated when I get to be around people. So usually my first thoughts are who do I get to see? And today it was you.
Oh, wow. Well, I'm very happy that you're here. So let's start with you just on your early path. You originally started your academic background. It was in biomedical science and theology. Fields not typically associated with development or entrepreneurship. What led you to make that transition into building a company like Troika?
Oh, that's such a big question. So yes, biomedical sciences. I was very young in high school and graduated into a UCLA biomedical program, which was a fast track medical program. I kind of hit the first phase of it and was completed. And I looked around and I thought, I don't even know what I want to be when I grow up. And so I decided to do a pilgrimage to the Great White North from, University of California all the way up to Edmonton, Alberta, and decided to, brush up on some Hebrew and, take some Old Testament studies and really figure out, what I believed and who I was and how I wanted to show up every day on this earth. And so, yes, they are very unlikely degrees. When I started Troika, I was a young 22-year-old, married for a few years, pregnant with our first, and it was a really difficult time to find a job here in the Okanagan. It was the 90s, the NDP were in charge, and we were on death's door economically. So I looked around and I thought, I can hardly find housing for myself, never mind for others. This is a real need in our community, and we're not going to really create economic growth without it. So for me, it was trying to fill a need. And I would say that I found it difficult having my biomedical sciences and theology background. And so I did end up getting an MBA from the University of Liverpool later on in my career.
So from biomedical to theology at an early age and into owning your own business, pregnant with your first child.
Yeah.
They say that necessity is the mother of all invention.
100%.
So that's when you realized you wanted to build something. So maybe give us a little bit more idea of why, though, because you sounds like you had the intelligence and the skills from your time at Liverpool to apply yourselves to 1,000 different forms of business. So why development?
Well, you're very kind. So thank you for that. But I'm a big believer in follow opportunity, take your passion with you. Like I said earlier, my passion is people. My passion is trying to make their lives just a little bit better in whatever way I can do that. And there was very little housing opportunities here in the Okanagan, and the housing didn't match the people that were coming here or the people that wanted to come here. And I'm not talking about the rich and famous. I'm talking the ones who want to work and the ones who want to, really create a life here for their kids and for their families. And so I built really moderate housing modes. Whether that was in townhomes or whether that was in, two-story walk-ups. Apartment housing was one of my very first. We had, there were hardly apartments that were built in the 20 years preceding that first one. So really trying to meet a need for our community and see how I could do that. Now, how did I get into development? It was literally following opportunity. So, having an opportunity to work and do a consulting, contract for a developer led to a few more, led to a few more, led to a business plan, and then me really launching on my own and going out on my own.
So the 1990s, that wasn't a time where there was as much diverse, it seemed women in that industry. It was mainly male dominated. So
Yeah.
what did you find in that in your first early experiences?
Well, I had created a business plan. I had incorporated my company, and I had three projects that were either fully leased up, commercial projects with like 100% leasing, or residential lease up, which you can't really get before it's constructed, or a townhouse project that I had done that was fully sold out before I even put a shovel in the ground.
Oh,
And each of those projects I needed financing for. So on one of the mixed use projects, the one that was 100% commercially leased and had a few residential units at the top, I went to the bank and I presented my business plan. Here's my budget. Here are my contracts. Back then, I could actually sign fixed price contracts. That is unheard of over the course of the last 10 to 15 years
mm-hmm.
in the construction industry. But I had everything ready, packaged up, tied with a bow. And sure enough, one of the big five said, yes, you can absolutely get money. Here's your term sheet. And, worked through those terms and worked through those conditions and went in to sign the documents. And wouldn't you know, at that point, they said, and just one more thing. We'd like, I don't know, a co-signer of some sort, like maybe a father or a husband. And I am a sole proprietor. Like I am literally the sole shareholder. And I realized in that moment, they're asking for a man's signature. It was not about, or a mother or a sister or a good friend. Like it was about a father or a husband, and so I with all the feministic and dignity that I could muster, grabbed my papers and marched out of that office and was like, I can't believe that they would ask me of that. And kitty corner to where I was the Valley First financial institution, and I looked at and I walked over there and I walked in and I'm like, I need a commercial lender. And sure enough, Dwight Folk was his name, and he came over and was like, okay, little lady, what can I do for you? And I said, here are my documents, this is what I need a loan for. He's like, well, let me see what we can do. 6 weeks later, I had signed with Valley First for my first loan. So was it existing? Absolutely. Was it hard to break into? For sure. This was I called it the cigar smoking, scotch drinking, and golfing community of a boys club that had existed for a lot of years. Who is this pregnant 22-year-old that's trying to get into our sandbox? So it was really tricky back then. I think that we've come a long way since then. I like to say when people ask me, are you ever discouraged being a female? I'm like, well, the year I was born was the first year that a woman could actually have a credit rating on her own. So we've come a long way, even in my lifetime.
Yes.
I have $500 million of loans. Like, isn't that incredible?
Mm-hmm.
Like, from where we came just in my lifetime. So do we have a long ways to go? For sure. But I think we've come a ways. And even in the duration of my career, what I see now today and what I'm able to do for other women, and men is great in terms of really getting the right voices around the table.
So, I've noticed that there's always a lot of time and attention by the Minister of Finance in Ottawa for the big banks. But, from the very beginning of your career, literally the beginning when you had those
Mm-hmm.
papers, it wasn't a big bank that got behind you. It was your local credit union. I also know that you have continued to be part of the credit union movement. In fact, you were saying earlier before we started taping that you were in Ottawa.
You were not, Dan.
Well, it was not in session. I'm glad to be with my folks here.
Absolutely.
But I really believe in credit unions. But for someone who is banked, so to speak, with credit unions and continues to, maybe you could just tell us why credit unions and why people should consider credit unions as that legitimate alternative.
Well, I think that, it's been long proven that economically, if you don't have your entrepreneurs firing on all cylinders, you lack resilience in your economy, you lack the ability to recover from any sort of upset, and that you lack the innovation to really see productivity grow. I think what we see in our productivity numbers is a direct result of not having a strong enough credit union system. a lot of people will say like the US is such this big system, and they've got so much money. They also have a huge credit union system, and way bigger than what we could ever imagine. And I think that credit unions have this amazing niche to have their decisions made on the ground. They have far more understanding of the local economies, and they know and they get to know those that actually bank with them. So I think that credit unions have to have a bigger role. I think that, as the bureaucracy and as the compliance and as the, laborious sort of entities have pressed down on the credit unions, I see a direct result inside of our economies.
Well, especially given the fact that it's no longer someone in a tower in Toronto, but an algorithm that decides whether or not someone is viable. If a young Renee Merrifield walked into one of those banks today seeking, to support to start doing her own projects and supply housing, just like you did in the 90s, I don't think that they would have a box to check off.
No.
And that's why I think credit unions still offer, where they're attached to their local communities. They know the local conditions. They know, who's bank worthy, who they can make those loans to, given that their exposure to their local region. And every time I speak with a credit union, they're always talking about putting that community and not just simply, what the bottom line is.
Absolutely. I think the other thing is that an algorithm is not going to tell you that women will underestimate their returns, or that they will be more, conservative when it comes, no pun intended, when it comes to when it comes to getting, predicting their outcomes. And it won't tell you that. And so when it compares me, let's say, against one of my male counterparts who has predicted, the sky, the moon, and, and all the stars in between, I think that, an algorithm isn't going to say, oh yeah, pick this one because she's probably more accurate. But a credit union will know she's been around here for 27 years. Wow, she's been through 2 recessions, and 2 really big recessions. And on the second one, her company emerged stronger, better, faster, and is one of the few developers right now that is growing. So a credit union will see that. A credit union will respond to that. An algorithm that's, and I think it's even worse than algorithms, an AI agent is not going to tell you all of that information.
Exactly. Well, as someone who's tabled several bills to get the red tape out of the credit union system, make sure they can use terms like bank or invest. Anyway, I'm just happy to see that the movement's growing and that we actually have national credit unions now that are broadening their appeal. So alongside your business success, you've consistently invested your time in the community in supporting organizations, serving on boards, and contributing to initiatives like Starbright. Now, I was there, very happy to join you at their 60th anniversary gala.
Yeah.
And it was just so wonderful to see you, as well as Mohini Singh, receive a Lifetime Recognition Award. So can you maybe explain Starbright, what the organization is, because some people may not be familiar, why you have spent so much time, trying to champion what they do?
Yeah, and I'm going to try not to cry because they are extraordinary. They are an organization that when a parent finds themselves with a special needs child, in that 0 to 6 range, there's somewhere to go. There's someone to talk to. There is someone that has seen something before and knows how to help you. They are completely hands-on. They have a beautiful facility. Please go and check it out. But they're in their facility. They're doing everything from occupational therapy, physiotherapy, speech pathology. They are teaching little babies how to swallow because they weren't born with that ability. They are teaching little ones to talk. They are dealing with those that have been diagnosed with autism. They are the facility that literally is coming to parents' aid in those early years. They're an organization that I came into contact with years and years ago through some fundraising aspects, but more so in the course of being an MLA when they approached me. And it was actually one of their instructors first that came and said, "Can I have a meeting with Renee?" And said, "I think our funding is about to be cut. We have not gotten a read on where things are going. And during that time, I had gotten word that the NDP were changing how certain funding aspects were going. I did not realize that it was going to actually mean that Starbright's funding would be cut completely at that time. But through the course of that first initial conversation, I reached out to their CEO or executive director, Rhonda, and then she introduced me to their board chair, Carol. And I'm talking; these are fierce fighting women. They are the absolute. They'll do it with a smile on their face, but they will absolutely. They are mama bears for all of those kids, and we're talking thousands. Like, yes, thousands that they've impacted. And when they gave me an estimate of all the children that they've had through their doors, we're talking then the tens of thousands of our community children that have been through their doors. But currently, they're in the thousands of kids that are being cared for by their practitioners. So when I heard that their funding was about to be cut and they had no alternative, it was literally they were going to close their doors. I at first thought there had to have been a mistake. Something had to have been wrong. We knew that we were getting a pilot of the Family Connection Center. We needed more, not less supports. The Family Connection Center was going to be from 0 all the way to 18, so it was a much broader age group. But we needed more, not less. So why would we take away funding from an organization that is doing great things? You could not find a parent that was unhappy with their services. So why would we take away that funding? And when I went, I first talked to the minister. I got a couple of minutes with the premier, and I said, I think you've made a mistake. I think something's wrong. Then the transition to Premier Eby at the time, and again, I kind of took another run. Like, I think there's been a mistake. And when I realized that there was no mistake, that this was actually being cut, and that they had very little time. I went back to Rhonda and Carol and I said, are you ready to get noisy? Like, are you ready to get loud? Because there's only one thing left that will impact change, and that is we have to let our community know what's at stake. Like, right now, this is happening very quietly, but we need to let them know that this is happening. And I have never seen a more organized parental group, a more organized alumni group, a more organized, practitioner group. It was phenomenal how quickly they were able to really get everyone moving in a direction. We chose 3 different activities. We were going to do a rally that was going to get some support from the media. We were going to do a feelings banner at that rally. That was one of the parents' ideas, which was absolutely amazing. You've got all these kids writing down what Starbright means to them. And then I was going to take it to Victoria and actually deliver it to Eby, to the minister, and then also deliver a pretty scathing rebuke to government for cutting that funding. And I was going to have Carol and Rhonda in the gallery when I did it. So it was the 1, 2, 3 punch. It was covered really beautifully in the media that rallied to the support of Starbright. And in the end, they had their full funding restored, and then with a little even top up at the end. So I was elated. I couldn't have been happier. And it was a ton of work. It was a ton of energy. And really, what I asked of them is, I said, I'm going to keep this in the minds of everyone in Victoria until we get that funding. So give me as many stories as you could, or as you can. And they did. They delivered email after email after email. I think we stopped counting after about 500 stories that the parents delivered to my inbox. And sometimes my staff would come to me just like sobbing, saying, I don't think I can read one more. But every one of those I would use in my stories, I would use in my speeches. I would make sure that government knew what Starbright meant to the people of Okanagan, and in the end, it was really successful. So
well, I'm so happy for Starbright. I'm so happy that you were able to champion that, because oftentimes people in government, either, like you said, either they don't know or they do know exactly what they're doing, and unless you can make it so it's unpalatable for them just to continue with the course of cutting. Anyway, it's an incredible story. And I also got to say that at that night, I met many of the board of directors, and some have been there on that board for decades, because they believe so strongly in the services that they offer. And I know, as someone who used to teach martial arts to young kids, the earlier that intervention is, where you just change a child's trajectory just by 1% or 2, can mean the total difference 20, 30 years later.
Totally. The more intervention at earlier ages, the better the outcome for all of society, not just for those children and changing their world, but all of society is positively impacted by this. So it is like, I am a big champion. And like I said, it wasn't about one or the other. It was about more, about less. And something that's working and working really well, you don't take it away. You just don't take it away.
Absolutely. Now, getting to your career, and a public career, away from Troika for a moment, you were elected Kelowna Mission MLA. You had the honor of serving. Just as someone who had so much experience at the executive level, to have that transition between the heights of your business and expertise to suddenly being a newbie in a very large chamber of other people with a variety of experience. Explain to us, what were your first impressions?
Well, it was truly the honor of my life to serve my community in that way. It was definitely different than I expected. I expected that hard work and learning and being who I was would be enough. It wasn't. I would say that learning the political system was a big learning curve. And I'm not talking about learning about when committee stage and when debate and first reading, second reading. I'm not talking about that. I'm talking about actually understanding how to maneuver through the different powers that be, and also understanding how the political aspect worked on my own, with my own caucus. Ultimately, we were a party that has imploded, and even that was really difficult, and that transition was very difficult to watch. So for me, it was very abrupt in terms of my learning curve. And I would say within about a year, I realized I just can't be distracted by that. I want to do good work, and I want to advocate well, and I want to make sure that the stories that I hear, locally are the ones that I take forward. And being in opposition is such a privileged position that way. You have way more boots on the ground. You get to know everyone way better. You're more present. You're more readily available. You get to hear more about what the impact is on individuals, and then that role of making sure that government knows how that impact is being felt is really powerful. So for me, that was wonderful and amazing. But I would say that the things I thought would be amazing were even better than I could have imagined, and the things I thought would be bad were way worse than I could have ever thought.
Okay, well, we have to ask the question. So can you give us an example of what was unexpectedly great and what was unexpectedly terrible?
I'll go terrible first and then great last, because I like to end on a high note. But I would say that terrible, politicking, it is not for the faint of heart. It is, someone told me when I first walked in, and I was actually like in the House before the House had started, or before the session had started, and I was just walking around and kind of taking it all in. And this very experienced MLA came up to me and said, "So I hope you're ready to lose all your friends." And I was like, "What? Nah, I won't lose all my friends." And he was like, "Yeah, I think you need to be ready." And I was like, "Well, but I'll gain new friends here, at the Ledge." And he's like, "No, don't trust anyone here." And I was like, but on the same team, you can trust them, right? And he was like, "Nah, don't trust anyone here." And I was like, what? And just realizing that, just like in business, where the court system will favor the bully, right? Will favor the one that has more money, that has more, aptitude, and that has more just like doesn't care about what the harm is that they're causing someone else. In politics, it's similar. I would love to think that it favors the ethical, the moral. I was told once as something that was supposed to be very negative, but like I was too principled, and I thought, I'm okay with that. Like I'm okay with being.
Well, if that's the worst thing someone could call you, as being too
Yeah.
principled, that is
Yeah.
probably one of the better ones to find yourself in.
Yeah.
So, okay.
But for women too.
Yes.
For women, it sticks. For women, once the media has a story about you, it's the same one that they play over and over and over again. Where I used to say, like, men are like Teflon. Like, the media will throw something at them and it just falls off. Like it didn't stick to the same extent. They didn't have the story that just got spewed over and over and over again. Whereas, like, Even one of my communications people at the Ledge said, I was told that it was bad for women, but until you've worked for a woman's communications, you have no idea how much it is just vitriol out there.
Well, I do know that social media is a completely different beast from listening to my female colleagues. So maybe if you could give some observations on that, and then maybe we can move on to the positive stuff.
Absolutely. Yeah. So social media is vicious. I was very grateful for the Sergeant Arms that is monitoring everything for us, because they'll also draw attention to where, you've got someone who's really not mentally well, or, something's going on that we're unaware of and that we're trying to, respond to or get rid of. So yeah, social media
and
was
usually they're talking about safety.
Yes.
And
Oh yeah.
and criminality
Death
in some
threats.
cases. Yeah, exactly, and that's really the point.
Yeah.
Is the sergeant at arms is there to try to make sure the security for MLAs so that they can do their jobs.
Absolutely. So yeah, it was lots of death threats, lots of the harassing stuff. There would be more said about my hair than what I was actually saying, or more said about what I was dressed like than what I was actually saying. So there's kind of that aspect of it for sure, but it also translated into the mainstream media. It was amazing how many times they would pick up some sort of trivia on Twitter and then try and blow it up into this horrific canceled culture story, just to really discount what you're saying, or discount who you are. And a lot of that was controlled by the other, by your opposition's comms people. They're feeding these stories to the mainstream media, and the way that they were picked up against women versus against men it was just unreal.
Unreal. These things they come together, and it can be brutal. But like I said, I'm glad that there are the sergeant at arms, that they do offer those, because again, no one signs up to public life to be criminally harassed, or to be stalked, or to be threatened. So
agreed.
Okay, well, let's move on to the positive. So what was so we had those are some of the terrible lows.
Yeah.
What are some of the unexpected highs?
So I was told when I first came in that in opposition you couldn't affect change, and I literally thought to myself, that's because you can't affect change. Watch me. I had this belief, you know what? No, you can. You absolutely can. It's how the system is structured. And I'm such a lover of the political system and of Parliament in general that for me it was no, it's actually supposed to be this way. And so it's using all the tools in your tool belt and making sure that you've got the best people on your staff, and making sure that you've got the best people, working alongside you shoulder to shoulder, and really picking your moments, picking your spots, and figuring out how to work with all the tools that you have. And that was the best experience of my life. And without getting too emotional, the night at Starbright, to have Rhonda stand up there and say we wouldn't be here if it wasn't for Renee, or to have, I told you I wasn't going to cry, but I was walking into Prospera to watch my Rockets play, and yes, they're my Rockets, but and one of the security guards starts running from about 10 feet away and running up to me, and literally and my husband was gonna intervene, what are you she doesn't have anything on her, and this gentleman literally tears streaming down his face, and I am clearly alarmed by his very aggressive hugging, and so I kind of I'm pulling away, and I'm looking at him, not putting anything together, and he's oh, Renee, you don't remember me because I've never met you in person. I reached out to you on Facebook with my wife's health issue, and she wouldn't be alive unless you actually went to Adrian Dix and asked him to intervene in her case and got her the help she needed from Washington State. And my 41-year-old wife is alive today because of it. That kind of stuff, nothing made me happier. Nothing made me happier.
That is what it is to be a representative of the people.
Totally.
Right there. That's the juice. So
totally.
So you made the decision to step away from elected office and return back to the private sector. So how has that experience informed the way you approach your own leadership today?
I understand a lot better, I would say, how laws are created, how flawed they can be, how much more important the voice of people, the voice of associations, the voice of the collective, the voice of the individual is. Um, I've also really, I would say, amped up just really trying to make sure that people take that place in space, that they don't let that voice go to someone else. How important democracy is, how important voting is, how important being a part of choosing your next leader is. Um, and for me, it's like I don't even care what party you're for. Just be a part of it. Just be a part of making sure that you're heard. I mean, obviously, I have my preferences. I make them well known weekly on Beyond the Ballot. But for me, it's definitely making sure that you're eyes wide open on everything that's going on. Nothing is more disheartening for me than to have someone walk our streets and say, "Ugh, it's just the way it has to be." No, 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 no. This is a legislative choice. This is a legislative choice. This is the choice of our politicians to have us live, to have us behave this way. And, I went all the way to Portugal to study the Portugal model with Dr. João Galau, who is the architect of that model and architect of CICAD, which is their Institute for the Mentally Ill and Substance Abuse, substance users. And, I was absolutely had my eyes opened back in 2018, 2019 with my conversations with him. And it does not have to be this way. Even I loved his quote. He said, "You in BC, you think that you're being compassionate, but all you do is put their trauma on display." And, when I walk past people, that are street entrenched, I will look at them and I will say, "I'm so sorry that we've put your trauma on display. I'm so sorry we don't have somewhere for you to go to actually get the help that you desperately need." And we need to be fully recovery focused, get people to whatever level they are absolutely capable of, give them, significance in this world, significance in our society, and make sure that we, get them back to employ and back into community as quickly as possible.
Well, especially when the system itself is designed not to address the problem. You can have politicians say it's a crisis. They can say that it's no longer a justice issue, it should be a health issue. But then when they don't respond by changing the health structures and actually making those supports that you might get in other models, like Portugal, it's not there at all. And I really appreciate the way that the doctor had referred that we're putting them on display, because it's always the private individuals, the businesses, and the communities that are let down when government doesn't address its own policies and structures.
Totally. And you know what, Dan, it's like it is both, right? It is a justice issue. It is some of the laws that were passed federally in 2015 and 2016 and 2017. And it was also the download from the federal government to the provincial governments to the municipal governments. I mean, it's no wonder that our city is literally buckling under the cost of all of our first responders. Like, that is 40% of our budget in 40 million of our budget every single year. That's ridiculous. That is ridiculous.
And again, it's funding the continual maintenance of the problem.
Totally.
Not creating the solutions that are necessary. Like you said, a permanent off-ramp. Instead, it's, again, a permanent cul-de-sac of pain.
Totally. And it creates so much trauma at every stage. From our first responders, you meet with them, and they came to Victoria to advocate as well. And one of the things that they would say is, like, we're losing our people to their own mental health issues, because they're in that same spiral. They see the same individuals over and over again, and they don't have any means to actually interrupt that incredible cyclical aspect of their lives, and it's traumatizing everyone. It's creating this, like, compassion fatigue was the word that Carmen Rempel taught me, right? Where it just literally you stop being able to have compassion because it's just been overloaded so many times. And whether that's in our emergency rooms, whether that's through our nurses who have been subjected to so much, open drug use,
Our
violence,
downtowns.
our downtowns. I mean, someone came to visit me at my office today, and our office is downtown, and I said, yeah, we're birds in a cage, as I had to press the button to open our front door to actually let him into our front door. We are all locked down in our own building because of what exists right outside of our doorstep, and how many times we've actually had interactions and police intervention in our own building. So that part of it for me, coming back from Victoria, was like, we need to sound the alarm bell. If people knew that these decisions were being made in Victoria and in Ottawa, they would be far more alert, and probably in your inbox way more, Dan. I'm very sorry about that. But far more about like, Dan, you have to do something.
Yep.
We need change here. And it's like, yes, we need to change the law. We need to change the system. We need to change our policies in order to actually affect change. But it can happen.
Yeah.
It can happen.
No. And this the thing is, I've learned that we need to continue to make the case. And we've had multiple private members' bills where the government literally just said, we are not interested in that approach. And so essentially they're maintaining the status quo, feeling that that they can just simply wash their hands of it. But one of the things I did want to make sure to get you as a housing expert, while we're on here, because in addition to some of the street chaos and drug addictions that we've seen, housing is also really a major pressure in the Okanagan. Mm-hmm. And we continue to hear that the challenge isn't isolated to one policy or to one level of government, but there seems to be an interaction or an inaction on multiple levels. So from your perspective, Renee, how would you describe the current system, and how is it functioning in practice from your view?
The current system of housing is chaotic, and not because we don't have enough rules and regulations. It's because it can put you on that same cyclical path. You can apply for a heritage conservation permit to actually, get your archaeologist on the site. And in that same, 18 months that it takes to get that permit, you have your geotech that's done. So you're punching holes all the way through your entire site, for your geotech study to be done and your environmental study to be done. And by the time you actually get the archaeologist onto your site, well, your environmental permit might have expired, or your agricultural land commission might have expired, or your transportation study is no longer valid. And so you have to redo each of these studies over and over and over again. And it's just this like death spiral that we all sit in. And whether that's, I've just mentioned all of the different provincial entities, but it's hard for even the local entities to then respond to each of those different aspects in real time. Because if you don't, then they're timing out your own applications. So with infill projects, they've kind of got a system where it seems to be a little bit quicker, but it's more expensive. Infill projects are not the least expensive projects to build. We've chosen this densification, which is more expensive for people, and I don't think it's where people ultimately want to live. Why are our communities of West Kelowna and Lake Country growing at these leaps and bounds? Well, because people want single-family homes. People want townhomes. They want a little tiny piece of dirt that they can have a dog run, or they can, have a toddler that's running around in. I think Toronto is a very cautionary tale in that, people don't want, and I think Ron Butler says it all the time, dog crates in the sky, right? Like, people don't want to live in 350 square feet in a tower. I don't care if it's made of concrete and steel. I don't want to live in 350 square feet, and I can't raise a family in 350 square feet. So you look at our modes of housing, our attempted densification. We wonder why our young people don't want to have kids. We wonder why they're getting married at older ages. Well, they don't see themselves ever being able to afford a life. They don't see themselves as to be able to afford a second bedroom, where their child could actually reside. We've got huge housing issues that are having a societal effect and an economic effect, right? Because, housing and our economy is like a chicken and an egg. If you don't have enough housing, you're not going to have a strong economy. And if you don't have a strong economy, you're not going to have strong housing. So you have to make sure that your supply is always enough, but enough for what people want to live in. Otherwise, you're going to get transportation issues. Like, look at the lower mainland, right? Like, you look at Highway 1 and that clogged up, a piece of infrastructure. Why? Well, because people are living in Langley and driving all the way to Vancouver where their job is. you know,
or even further,
or
for
even
Chilliwack or even
exactly Hope. I've heard that too, that they're commuting from Hope. So I think that we have massive issues, and that we felt as politicians that you could just cram everyone into a real density, and that is not proven to be the case. In fact, people would rather stay in their parents' basements than live in the dog crate in the sky.
So it's no longer about just simply getting the permit and breaking ground, because we also talked a little bit about financing earlier, but now there's all these new the extra things that are pancaked on top from different levels of government.
Whether it's the rules and regulations, everyone's got their finger also in the taxations. So you look at the cost of what housing costs. In some jurisdictions that can be 30% of your total cost is just your taxes, your levies, and your fees. That is atrocious. And we sit there and we scratch our heads and wonder why housing is so expensive. And it's like anything that you tax is going to cost more. Anything that you put fees on is going to cost more. And anything that you slow down is going to cost more. So it's no wonder for us as to why that is the way it is. Also, you look at some of the lowest priced markets across Canada, and they have the fastest time to building permit, and they have the least taxation. Edmonton doesn't have DCCs. Winnipeg doesn't have DCCs. Regina doesn't have DCCs. Okay, well, they have to pay for their infrastructure somehow. Yeah, they do. And there are ways that they can do that, but there are ways of doing it. Keep it at such a low amount and keep it very, very localized to where that developer is actually building. People are always surprised when I say, oh, I still have to put in the infrastructure. Like yes, I pay all the DCCs, but then I also pay to pull Fortis's line over, or I pay to put those pipes in the ground, or I pay to, upgrade the city, streetways, or, our project at Dougal, over in Dougal and Rutland, we had to pay, to put in this beautiful, corridor, active transportation corridor. It's awesome. It's beautiful. Well, yeah, but I paid for it. My DCCs didn't pay for it.
Yes.
So we're being like double feed and double taxed, and that all has to be transferred. Because of the financing that we get, all has to be transferred to the end user.
And again, it all has to, when you ask for financing for development, they will take into account every dime towards taxation. It's very similar to what Cassie DeVere, the executive director of the Central Okanagan Home Builders Association, she said on my podcast that in fact, we are taxing housing in a way comparable to a vice like alcohol or tobacco. So you would say 100% that's the way.
100%. And we're also, our politicians are becoming reliant on the money. Like whether that's the property transfer tax, whether that's our DCCs, whether that's, CMHC's fees that just keep going up and up and up, even though they're posting the record profits. I don't understand how we as the political entities don't understand that when you actually put that into your line item as general revenue, that's gonna negatively affect housing affordability. But yet, every level of government has been pulling from development. And I heard a great Anne McMillan, who's the former CEO and president of the Urban Development Institute. She just did a podcast actually with Kirk LaPointe. And he asked her the question, like, what do you say about the fundamentals of housing? She's like, they're done. They're broken. There is no more money in the housing pot to take from. And so every level of government is either trying to, create their own pot of money, or is going to suffer through.
Or they'll have nothing.
They'll have nothing.
Yeah. So
which is like build Canada homes.
But again,
oh my chicken. Where are the homes?
Yeah. Again, if the structures are not fit to the environment, where all the money is coming in, and you have zero development, that again falls on individual businesses like Troika, but also on the individuals that want to get into a home.
Totally.
And again, it disrupts it, because if someone moves from an older home into a newer home, that creates a vacuum, which again, someone who was renting previously, they may be able to afford to get into that as a starter home. So again, this is where the fundamentals, as the podcast you said to Kirk LaPointe, it's broken.
And I'm going to go one step further. It also affects our society in our future. It affects those, why do we have negative natural birth rates or growth? Like, well, because our housing is broken. Like, it's not rocket science, but if we actually had all of those moving pieces where the renter could see the empty house that they could move into, and they could fix up, and they could, and that it wasn't being turned into a fourplex that was now more expensive. One of those fourplexes was now more expensive than the original older home that, the lot was on. If they could actually see themselves moving into one of those, well, yeah, then we could see them having kids. We could see them building those families, but instead we don't.
So again, the podcast is called Finding Solutions. So Renee, I've given you a magic wand. So what would some of the solutions that you would prescribe to fix local, regional, provincial, federal?
So I would do on a provincial level, I would change and flip the script on anything that is BC housing related. The way I would do it is I would start buying and giving a mandate to those agencies to buy as an early purchaser. If we don't want the investors making the money, if we don't want those that are coming in with foreign money to actually make those early purchases and park their money for the next 2 to 3 years while that project is being built, but we want those lower priced units offered for the general public, then do it ourselves. Let's do it as the taxpayer and then offer them to the taxpayer at that lower price point once the project is finished. And then you don't actually get the inflationary pressures that an investor is going to require for their money. So I think that that's an easy one. Just come in and start pre-buying those units that you want for your society as a whole, and that you want either to offer as a rental or that you want to offer as a for sale project to get people into the market. There are some examples of that. There's housing societies in the UK that have been very successful, where if you've rented from them for 5 years, then you can qualify to actually purchase. It's a way they get rid of their older stock, purchase into new stock, and let the cycle of housing continue. So it's I'm not even inventing that one. The second thing I think we have to do is open our cities up. Even Kelowna has this artificial urban development boundary. We need to get away from that. We are trying to pay for older infrastructure with newer development by putting new development into densified areas of our city. We actually need to create suburbs. We need to create suburbs where people live. Now, I'm not talking about suburbia of the 1950s where you got your quarter acre and you put like a little, a house on it. I'm talking about really creative densities where you could, Edmonton has a zone called the RMD zone. And it's this like multi-density zone for residents. And you could have a 0 lot line next to a duplex, next to a fourplex, next to a single family, next to a small lot, and you have to just undulate your streetscape. Very creative, very beautiful streetscapes. Lots of different modes of housing, lots of different price points. You can have mom and dad living in a rancher right next to, us in a 3-story that's going to need space for the kids and a dog. So it's very creative. And I think, again, we need to get more creative with our zoning and open it up so that we can actually get lower cost modes of housing. Single family house is one of the lowest costs per square foot that you can get.
Mm. So, as I'm a federal politician, what would be the federal prescription?
Get out of the way. The feds coming in with the Build Canada Homes is absolutely ridiculous. One of the most successful things that the feds have ever done was CMHC and opening up the really creative solutions for whether it's purpose-built rentals, whether it's partnerships that you're doing with the city, or cities, municipalities, nonprofits. Those are very difficult to finance commercially. So the feds definitely have a very good niche that they can amplify, but why we are trying to get them involved in moving into housing is ridiculous. The other thing the feds absolutely unequivocally need to get on is our trade. We need trade corridors. We need better relationships across the board. We need a CUSMA agreement with the US so we know exactly what we're dealing with. We need, trade negotiations and relationships, whether it's with India, whether it's with China. We need to get goods and services into our borders in a much more expeditious way. We need to get our ports cleaned up. They should be taken over and with police forces that will absolutely make sure that they're run like well-oiled machines and not as corrupt as what they can be or what they have been, and really get trade moving forward so that we can lower the cost of goods and lower the cost of housing.
So the Home Builders Association is also advocating getting rid of the GST on
Oh,
homes.
unequivocally.
Okay. No, I just wanted to
100%.
make sure that because that is 100% within the federal government's jurisdiction.
100%, and should not even be there in the first place. Yep.
So just in regards to just where you're at, you're back at Troika, you're doing fantastic things. I understand that you've had some opportunities though as well in your experience, because you mentioned the United States, where you've built on both sides of the border.
Yeah.
So what would you say would be the biggest difference between building something in, let's say, British Columbia versus building something in, let's say, Washington or Oregon State?
Okay, I'll give you Idaho.
Idaho. Okay, pardon me. Idaho.
No, and this is because it's a real life example. So, went down to Boise, Idaho. Took a little contingency of our organization. We are partnered with a builder down there, and so we walk in to the Economic Development Commission. The Economic Development Commissioner has the head of planning there from Boise, Idaho, as well as from Treasure Valley. There's a few different municipalities right there. And so has one of the other municipalities represented at the table when we walk in the door. Then they say, like, what would you like to build? Here are some real estate agents that we can put you in contact with. And so we start asking the questions. Well, what are your DCCs or fees or costs? None. Zero. Zilch. Okay, well, what are your permitting processes? Everything is pre-zoned. You have to get a development permit that's issued by staff, and you have to get a building permit. What's our time from application to that? 6 weeks.
6 weeks.
6 weeks.
So, okay. Average here in Canada?
A year to 18 months. If you have a really simple infill that's already zoned. Could be, one of our projects, we're working on year 8.
6 weeks versus
8 years.
8 years.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Yeah. So that's just an example of one of the differences. So, my money doesn't have to, and I'm not talking my money, investors, financiers, doesn't have to sit there for 12 years, for 8 years, for 18 months, for 12 months. It's in the ground in 6 weeks.
And the people that want to live in those homes also don't have to wait.
No, and their cost of living is so much less.
Yes.
Right? Like their cost of housing is so much less. Their building permit process, their
There's
actual...
no value-added tax either?
No, none.
Okay.
None.
So
that's just one real life example. But the other is that their credit union system is so prolific and so powerful in that, how they are governed and how, what they can actually do and how they can deploy cash and how they can actually, whether it's topping things up, whether it's coming alongside a private equity fund, they are just very versatile at working together, at working on projects together. That's not alarming for them. Their risk tolerance is far greater than what ours is here in Canada.
What would you owe that to?
They're more ambitious. They want to grow. They want to grow their economy. They want to grow their populations. They want to succeed. They want to be happy. They want to have, they want to be happy in their lives, in their world. And yeah. So, Boise, Idaho, case in point, the Economic Development Commissioner had, facts and figures as to how many jobs were being created. But also, like, you look at all of the businesses that they have attracted, it's exponential. Yes, they have Micron, but they also have Amazon, and they have, Meta, and they have, huge amounts of tech infrastructure coming in. And they said, in Boise, Idaho, we have your potato chips and we have your microchips. It was like, you kind of do.
Yeah. And 6 weeks to get a permit.
6 weeks to get a permit.
Yeah, that's pretty. Yeah. Anyway, folks, I guess people at home will be able to judge themselves because that is 6 weeks compared to a year, 2 years longer just to get a permit. So
Totally.
That's amazing. So last part of today's conversation, I've really enjoyed it from here. So you've made it full circle. You're back at Troika. You're building the things that the kind of homes that people want. So what's next for you? What's next for Troika? What's next? What vision do you have for the next stage?
Well, the development industry is really in a difficult time right now. It's one where I haven't seen it this bad for a very long time, and I'm not talking just about like, Toronto or Vancouver. It's across the board. CMHC has changed all of the rules, and it just no longer makes sense. So you're seeing purpose-built rentals falling off. The market isn't coming back to life. Some people are like, well, yeah, but interest rates have lowered. Well, they have, but bond yields haven't. So then you have this, high 5-year rate still. So, the qualification and the stress test from OSFI is such that people still aren't qualifying for homes. So, you have this perfect storm of there is no market, there is no purpose-built rentals that we can actually create more inventory for. And so even though our vacancy rate here in Kelowna is sitting at like 6-7% right now, it's a cliff. Like it is an absolute cliff. And our prediction at Troika is that by 2028, we're going to see vacancy rates back down in the like sub 3%. That's scary because now we're back in the same place that we were previously without having any housing stock to actually replace it. So I think that we're in a very difficult place in general. Yes, in Kelowna and the Okanagan, but we're also in a very difficult place in the Lower Mainland. We're in a very difficult place, really across Canada. Having said that, there's always opportunity. And what we've tried to do at Troika is look at where are the opportunities. So we try to be creative, whether it's our partnership with the City of Kelowna and doing the middle income housing projects. We're looking with 2 other municipalities right now at doing something similar, but in different ways because they have different metrics and they have different needs. And then we're also really looking at the senior space and saying, you know what, this is a season and a time where we will be able to build some really great seniors accommodation to provide for that demographic that has 18 months to 2-year wait lists right now.
Yeah, well, that's again the proverbial joke in the Okanagan is that. There's no shortage of people that want to stay and live out their days here. And unfortunately, though, they also need to have places that work for them at every
Absolutely.
stage of their life. So anyway, Renee, I just want to thank you again for sharing some of your time and expertise with us today. And not only for the conversation, but for the leadership that you've shown across business, your public service, and community life here in the Okanagan. And your work, it just consistently is about building. Building community, building opportunity, and making sure that it's the opportunities not just for you, it's for the people that want to live here. And housing in particular is a big priority that I hear about all the time. So conversations like we had today specifically on housing are really important. Mm-hmm. And we're fortunate to have individuals in our region who continue to contribute just like you do. So I'm proud to call you a friend, and I'm sure there'll be a next time that we can invite you on Finding Solutions to come and share some more. And I just thank you for joining us.
Thank you so much, Dan, and for all you do.
So again, I'm Dan Albus. Thank you for joining us here today for Finding Solutions. And there's lots of other great conversations we have with people like Renee, like Cassie DeVere, and others who have great ideas about what we could be doing in the Okanagan with the right kind of leadership. So look forward to seeing you on the next episode. Thank you.